Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Red Raider football on our minds. Spring has sprung. We're talking pass catchers specifically and filling shoes, as in who's going to fill the shoes of Josh Kelly and why may we think he may not even be on the roster yet.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So visit FanDuel.com to get started with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again, my man, and we got a gear switching going on today's episode. Hoops heavy, and it's still right here, right in that little corner of the mind to soon be returned to, I'm sure, on an upcoming episode. But spring football camp also in motion for Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders, and we will spend time with that program on today's episode, specifically taking a listen to some comments from Texas Tech wide receivers coach Juice Johnson, who we got to hear from this week, and specifically focusing in very much on that group in general. Chris, it's always one of great interest in West Texas. Obviously been a high standard set there for those pass catchers in the past. In this era, I might even be inclined in a roundabout way to include some tight ends among some of those conversations as well. But today I want to get to a couple of different things. We'll hear from Juice Johnson talking about one of your newest, one of your shiniest pieces in Reggie Virgil. I also want to get to filling shoes. Whenever it comes to a leading pass catcher from a year ago, leading impact guy, just as far as Red Raiders, Josh Kelly, who's stepping into that role as we move forward. And we talk about guys like Caleb Douglas, Coy Aiken, and some others. But I'm really kind of curious as well, Chris, as we just look back to last season and think about what's coming up. We've been kind of asking, hey, when can we return to this group meeting that high standard that has been set previously? Once upon a time, the Afros, America's finest receivers on Saturday. Can we be that again? I got to, say for myself, you resembled that a little bit more closely last season. So maybe we're headed in the right direction. What do you think?
And back on the gear shift, I will just say that Chris Level in the 80s, I would say 1980s, at either Putt Putt or the Chuck E. Cheese or Crystal's Pizza. In my case, I would shift that gear on a game called Pole Position. The pizza grease would be all over the steering wheel and everything. And I mean, there wasn't a better pole position player in the world than this guy right here.
I bet there wasn't, Pamela.
That's right. I mean, I could get it done. Anyway,
you grind it till you find it, right?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, vroom, vroom, that whole deal.
Applicable advice for many walks, by the way.
Yeah, we. This receiving group is interesting to me because I don't really recall a time that if you do trot out Reggie Virgil, Caleb Douglas, and Coy Aiken as your three primary starters, that you've ever been as big as that. I mean, that is essentially 6'3", 6'4" across the board. Because in the air raid, you've always got your smaller. That doesn't mean in any way that they weren't good players. I'm just talking just sheer size. And you've always had, I remember when you had, there was a time when Tuberville was here and you had two 6'2", 6'3" guys on the outside, but it's just the three of them. That's what's interesting. And, I don't know what it all looks like because I think your offense is a bit different schematically than it has been. And I think what you're going to see is you'll see your outside receivers lined up even further wide to really stretch the field. I think there's some Art Briles / Baylor principles and kind of what Mack Leftwich wants to do. Not that that's what it is. I just think there's a few things in there that he's borrowed. Whereas when Mike's deal was, he had the really wide splits. And there's always just these nuances of what each guy's preference is on kind of, but I do think there's some really wide, I guess the term would be alignments for your receivers. Really, it's sideline to sideline. And, it just creates a lot more space to try to cover for the defense. And it does require your quarterback to be able to have a strong arm and be able to hit some of those throws on the opposite hash and all those kinds of things. But this is an interesting group. It's a proven group, but yet again, it's unproven. You've never really had none of these guys have necessarily been the flat out dude in a big time league just yet. Caleb Douglas he was your second leading receiver last year. Reggie Virgil, he did this in the Mack. Coy Aiken was a really good receiver for you last year. He was third on the team in catches and yards and things like that. And so it leads to a question about, where do you go on third down? When it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and goal, like who is it that I'm going to? Who do I trust? Who is going to be consistent and make the sure play? And I don't know if we know the answer to that. And I think we probably would have had some assumptions last year that Josh Kelly would have been a pretty good candidate for that. And boy, did he turn out to be that. I mean, you look at 340 of his 1,000+ yards were on third downs. 32 of his 89 catches were on third downs. That's the money down. You got all those coaches over there standing over there for a reason, and they do the money symbol and everything, like when because that's when you earn it. And I don't know if we just necessarily know who that guy is, and if that guy is playing the slot, or if is it one of these, and that's what's tricky is you're probably really not able to find a lot of that out now through the spring because you don't have that quarterback receiver chemistry being worked on with what is likely to be your starting quarterback in Baron Morton. That'll have to wait until summertime.
Yeah, so there could be, when it comes to the question I just posed a moment ago, who's filling the shoes of Josh Kelly, a figurative and a literal answer that maybe is not the same. Maybe it is the same. I don't know. We'll circle back to that coming up in just a moment. Let's first take a listen to some comments here from Texas Tech wide receivers coach Juice Johnson, talking about sort of generally the MO as you move from 24 to 25.
We talked about collectively as an offense is create big plays and explosive. I think we have the guys that can create big plays, explosive plays on the edge. I think that we have running backs that can take and hit a home run with any carry that they get. So to me, a heavy emphasis on blocking on the perimeter, not just only in the passing game, but just doing our part in the run game as well. Because again, we get a body on the perimeter. We have the backs that can take it the distance. As far as the pass game is concerned, make the play that comes to you. That's what I'm looking for these guys to do. Dominate their one-on-one and make the play that's coming to you. We got a saying in the room, no such thing as a 50-50 ball. When the ball is in the air, we got to own the ball. We got to claim the ball. And then, quite frankly, we got to be able to be counted on in critical situations. I thought Josh Kelly was a big part of that last year on third down, continuing to move the chains. We knew we could count on him and find him. We got to continue that in critical situations, whether it be at a 2-point conversion, third down, fourth down, critical down. We got to be able to have guys step up in those situations and maximize that for us as well right there. So that's what I look forward to.
Let's get to it, Chris, because he mentions it there at the end. And I'm thinking about one of those big catches, I think maybe in Ames, Iowa, that kind of fits that category for Josh Kelly. But those shoes are now vacant. So where does it start? Who are we talking about? Whether it's the spot they're standing on the field or kind of living up to that clutch impact ability that we're describing. First, today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Fixes tired fast. Whether you've got a long list of tasks at work or a bundle of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can cover everything with energy to spare. If you're like me, you've always got a lengthy list of things to get done around the house. So when you get your supplies for any project, don't forget the most essential one, a 5 Hour Energy shot. 5 Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And that's why 5 Hour Energy Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy and hectic day. And you always know where to find 5-Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. Even better, stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy shots. And right now, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions and does not apply to subscription orders. Boost your day, boost your life, and get in the Get It Done zone by going to 5hourenergy.com today. Where does it start? Who are we talking about? Whether it's the spot they're standing on the field or kind of living up to that clutch impact ability that we're describing.
And like, do you remember back in the bowl game, there was a couple of key drops by Caleb Douglas that would have been big plays and needed at the time. That's the next step for somebody like him, is that it's not just saying this is gravy or this is, man, that's a big play. No, like, we have to have it right now. Like, just catch it. I'm not worried about what you do after. Just catch it. But I'm not trying to pick on him because he had a phenomenal scrimmage this past Saturday, and he had 2, I think, 50-plus yard touchdown catches and all that. But that's the next step with certain guys. If you want to be the dude, it's like, I need it on this down in this critical situation. You hear Juice talking about it right there.
Chris, real quick, I kind of thought Caleb last year, that was sort of the thing early on. It was like, oh, man, there was almost a big play, but he wasn't bringing it in. I actually thought he became a more reliable guy in that department as the season went on. It wasn't as good as Josh Kelly, but that sort of was, I guess, one of the primary talking points for him as a player from the get-go, wasn't it? Just making sure you were bringing it in.
Yeah, there was some inconsistency to start. You're absolutely right, and then he settled in. And I just point to the bowl game because you're in a key game, and you're in a what you were, I guess, what was kind of ended up being a shootout, and you wanted it to be a shootout, but you couldn't keep up because their guys were catching those, and you weren't. And again, Caleb is a phenomenal player, and he's going to do huge things for you this season. And like I said, he's already following up on that with a monster scrimmage this past Saturday. As far as who replaces Josh Kelly, if it's to be, because there's something to be said about the slot receiver, and I think that's why they had Josh there, because it can be a bit of a mismatch if you get, and that's typically why you see medium to smaller guys play that spot, because they get lost in space and they're slippery, and there may not be many yards after the catch there, but it's like, hey man, it's 3rd and 8, and he catches a 9-yard pass. It's like, okay, move down, and it's another Red Raider first down by my man Casey Cowan, right? And yet you're going to be pretty big at this deal. I'm going to offer up some options here for you on because I don't know if and maybe it will be either Reggie or Caleb Douglas. We'll talk about Reggie Virgil more in a minute, but they are more of your vertical home run threat. I think your big play. I mean, we'll get into some of these numbers with some of these guys, but I mean, some of these guys, it's like the 3rd down's a bit different at times. You're scrambling around, and you just got to find a safety, net. And Josh Kelly just happened to be that. They would call things for him, and he almost always delivered. Led the country by a wide margin in 3rd down receptions, and it just was it was this very comforting. It's like Christian Anderson coming off the bench. It's like, oh yeah, that makes me feel really good about life in general, right?
Say it, Chris. What is it? Is it the snickerdoodle feeling? What was it?
Yeah, I have used that analogy. That's
he's our football snicker. He was our football snicker.
Yes, that's right. The smell of just warm baked cookies.
That's right.
So let me give you some of these options here, because let's just not consider, and maybe it is, but I don't know if it will be. But for purposes of this conversation, we'll have some fun with it. If it's not your 2 outside guys, and it's not Caleb or Reggie, who could be that guy? Coy Aiken would be the easy answer. However, I do think that at times they will move Coy outside and maybe move Caleb and Reggie inside. And so I don't want to, and the reason I bring that up is Coy won't be just your main slot receiver all the time. Okay. Like Josh Kelly was. I don't think that he will necessarily major in that. I think definitely a minor that tilts to major at times, but he'll be moved around. And I think that's how you roll. The other guy, and this is just, he's very unproven and it's all in front of him, but he's one of the young guys that I think you're really ready to see take some next steps, is Kelby Volson. He's one of the young guys that I think continues to emerge and continues to work his way up. He's done the right things. He was somebody that they made sure that was going to get involved in the bowl game and all these things.
Hey, hadn't he been like an onside kick specialist a couple of times or once?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. But he's got 3 catches, on his ledger in a career. So yeah. That part's a bit tricky. But what if I go door number 3 or door number 4 here with some wild cards?
Bring it on.
Because I think there's a better than good chance that it could be, and I feel stronger about maybe door number 3 than I do door number 4 for purposes of this answer to this question, but hear me out. Door number 3, Terrence Carter. And Terrence Carter is the tight end from Louisiana that you got, but what Terrence Carter is, he's not your traditional tight end. This is a 6'2", 240-pound receiver in many aspects. Yes, they'll put his hand on the ground, but they will move him around in a variety of different ways. And while he won't be as small and slippery as some of your other traditional slot receivers, I do think that's a bit of a mismatch in some ways because he's very quick and fast for 6'2", 240. And, like he averaged nearly 15 yards a catch last year. 4 touchdowns. He had nearly 700 yards. He will get moved. He's kind of going to be a fascinating chess piece for Mack Leftwich on where they put him, because hand in the ground, lined up outside, lined up in the slot. A variety of different things. Now, door number 4. What if I were to tell you that maybe the answer to this question isn't here yet?
Maybe I would want to hear more about that.
Well, I'm just saying I would not rule that out either. If there is a slot with speed that checks the box of maybe a prior relationship or whatever, I won't be surprised at all if they are still in the whiteout game when it comes to the portal window in the late period. Again, it's got to make sense. These late portal additions all are cherry on top type things. This is all about, I think you could go to war with this team you've put together right now. Okay. But any one of these additions, it's what I'm going to think that they deem as, this is a put us over the top. This is like we can't pass it up type scenario, and that means the options on who would be available there are probably pretty slim. But I would say that again, and we've seen it with David Bailey in Stanford and in that situation, that if they can get him, that's what they're going to do, because he's something that they would like to have, don't necessarily need it, would really like it. And I think the same goes for slot receiver. So Aiken, Volson, Carter, question mark, maybe your 4 options. I don't know.
Chris, about that question mark. Why did you mention or include the descriptor prior relationship? You got all the time in the world, by the way. Don't feel like you got to rush.
It's probably best to leave that. If something were to happen, I think it will make sense and go, okay, I get it. I'll just leave that there. How about that? We'll leave that on the.
No, we've got more time. I don't want you to feel. Are you sure? Okay.
I know.
Obviously there could be a prior relationship, say in the portal, or
sure,
and recruiting, or whatever the heck it might have been. I don't know.
And typically, that's when things like this happen or happen quickly, it's like, okay, I want to go do this, or I know this guy. I don't need to, like, I can skip some of the process because we know this person.
Like the do not contact tag thing, those type of people.
Leave me alone.
Yes.
I already know where I'm going. Save your time and your money and your phone call, your texts, your postage stamps. Yeah.
And I also haven't been tampered with previously. I need to say all of these things at the same time.
But you can, I mean, yeah.
Because one of those prior relationships also could be so tight that, I don't know, he's like wearing our jersey last year or something. I'm spitballing, thinking about all the options. So
So anyway, but replacing that role won't be easy, and it comes with a pretty heavy burden. And maybe there's a scenario to where you don't have, it's so lopsided to where this is our guy. Because I almost thought last year. Do you remember when you get into the middle of the season last year and they finally got a break, and then there was this big deal about they self-scouted. They had, and Joey was like, I'm going to have our defensive people scout our offense and vice versa, and then we're going to come together and we're going to share what we know. Well, I mean, duh. But one of the things was, hey, man, on third down, we would double Josh Kelly. We would like go, somebody else is beating us, but we're not letting you throw it to him. You know, and like that's an obvious, but it's that's the kind of thing. And maybe it'll be spread out a bit, and you won't have somebody that leads the country. But there's still a component of, okay, bleep is hitting the fan. We got to have it right now. And it's, and who are we going to? Like, who do I trust the most? Because somebody will be the answer to that question.
Sure. And it may have to come like in a phone booth. I mean, even if you're covered, you need to be open kind of situation.
and there's no such thing as a 50-50 ball. We
I like that.
Yeah. We think that ball is ours, according to Juice, which I love. And I love the mentality.
Glad you circled back to that, because that was.
Because you got enough big bodies where you could get really physical with a lot of DBs out there, and we've kind of glossed over this part too. But like, don't think that doesn't play well in the run game, because if you can maul DBs in the run game, and people don't think about that aspect, but that's what really good teams do in those aspects. And then you wonder why, man, they really throw it well, but they really run it well. Well, because everybody participates in the blocking part of this thing. And when you got big Caleb and big Reggie out there and Coy, who's, you know, Cowboy Coy and all that, you should really be able to handle yourself well in that aspect and maul smaller DBs in most cases, and allow, you know, Joyner and Williams and Dickey to do their thing in the run game.
Yeah, Douglas, Coy, Virgil, that sounds like another set of Earp brothers now that I'm thinking about it. They could be really tough on the outside. And yeah, you're thinking about, man, when you can move people with your offensive line and you've got a group of pass catchers that are blocking like that within the secondary, it's all of a sudden for like a back sort of like Taj Brooks, who's going to make one man miss. All of a sudden he's got this home run capability that I didn't know he had. And it's because every defensive back is on his ass, I guess. It tends to help if you can make that guy miss, and then there's not another. Much easier said than done. And as far as any trend towards back, the era of the afros, you know, just like I do, that physicality, that blocking, something that they took, I know, great pride in, and probably as much as anything else they did, and did it very well. So would love to see that facet return. And I would tell you, man, I'm glad you include our guy Terrence Carter, Terrence Carter, because I like the tight end mention, because I would have told you as the season went on, with all due respect to Coy, who I do view as a reliable possession, you know, receiver kind of guy. Like, yeah, I trust him in a lot of those situations, hands wise. Jalen Conyers might have been the second guy on my list. If they said you can't draw one up for Josh Kelly, but you need a play, it might have been Jalen Conyers that I'm calling on next. He may have even been a dude throwing the football, as a matter of fact, in that situation. I don't know, but he became a pretty clutch guy for you in some of those moments to just try and figure something out, manufacture something, make a play. So maybe we dip back into the tight end pond. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and he'll go down here as one of the, we use this term a lot, but it didn't apply any better to anyone like than Jalen Conyers, like the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
I mean, run it, throw it, catch it, block. I mean, high five on the way to the end zone. Pick it. I mean, it's like I'm good for all of it, dude. Like, just sign me up. And Carter is somewhat like this, but you'll find have to, I mean, Jalen was 6'5", 260, ran, and he's the way he's testing out and everything. He's got a bright future, and the only bad thing is that we just barely got to have him here. But TC will be somebody that is, this chess piece that I just do think that you'll see him. I don't think you can put him in a box. I think you'll see him in a variety of different roles and asked to do different things. And I think that's part of the fun of it for him. And I think he'll excel accordingly. I could even see him lined up in the backfield in some instances, and whether it's being snapped to him or whether he's coming out of the backfield, whether he is, whatever. I mean, he could be a gadget guy in some ways too. But I just think he's kind of an X factor for you. And it's not a traditional. It's weird because he's a 6'2", 240-pound tight end. That's just not. And at this level, those are very different.
Before we get out of here, Chris, let's take another listen to Juice Johnson talking about another guy we're excited to get to know right there with Mr. Carter. It's the aforementioned Reggie Virgil. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness rolling on, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on anything and everything from buzzer beaters, comebacks, and more, to even who's cutting down the nets. And of course, it doesn't get any easier or faster than FanDuel, the FanDuel app. Simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com today and get in on the action. Reggie Virgil. And before we get some thoughts from you on him and the way that he could fit in this season, let's take another listen to Coach Johnson talking about what stood out to him and what he feels like makes Reggie just a little bit different.
The innocence in his nature too, as you see him like kind of walking around, like he's a very serious person, like when it comes to football, and wants to be great, but he also has kind of that like fun, like he loves it, like he loves football. It doesn't feel like over the top like a job to him. I would say, like, he loves to show up. His energy is infectious, always a smile on his face. And so I just think the way, like, the energy that he brings into the spaces in the room that he enters, he brings that same energy to the field, which allows him to just go play free, right? Allows him to go play free. And so he has a lot of traits that also, help him and are conducive to being a solid receiver, such as his vertical speed. He's twitchy. He has a great catch radius. He can get in and out of breaks. He will put his hands on you in the run game. So he's solid there. So a lot of things about Reggie that can do that. But I think the biggest thing is just his approach and how he enters the spaces that he enters in.
Chris, I'm glad to have so many big, large, shiny objects in the trenches to be excited about as far as additions are concerned. And I have been consumed by a lot of those. But caution yourself in sleeping on this edition. I know Virgil is going to be one of the most exciting, I think, in red and black this fall.
Because we talked about Carter, we talked about Aiken, and we talked about Douglas. These are all 13 or 14 yards a catch guys last year. Virgil was nearly 20 yards a catch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. and don't forget this. Remember we were sitting there talking about like the put us over the top type pieces, and like if we're going to do something, it's got to check certain boxes, and it's got to be like a can't miss type thing. They weren't initially really interested in taking a receiver last year. I think they were definitely looking at tight end. I think receiver was in the conversation, but it was like, hey man, we may not do anything or whatever. And then when he got in, it was like, okay, this is one we'd like to have. And I think, what's the stat? It's like, I think there was 7 players last year in college football that have 5 catches of 50 yards or more. And he was one of them. He was one of them. I mean, these are, because I looked this up, but like, let's see, Caleb Douglas had 1 catch of 50 plus yards. Coy Aiken had a 70 yarder, just the one. Terrence Carter had a 59-yarder and a 74-yarder. But Reggie Virgil, again, it was in the Mack and all that, but I mean, he had 5 of 50 plus. But when you start to put all this together, we joke about the term explosive or chunk play. Remember, we had a field day with that terminology last year. Well, guess what you just added? Explosive / chunk play, dude. So that it just makes everything easier when you flip the field, you score off of these things. And then when you hear how much he loves it and how much he's invested and, all of those things, it should be, scratching you where you itch.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Kicking again.
Yeah,
man.
right.
And I'm also kicking at this fact too. Really good programs out there that wanted this guy to be in their uniform. Oklahoma, Michigan, Auburn.
And that we're quite peeved, miffed, pissy, whatever, about the fact that he ended up as a Red Raider. Now, yes. he is, it wasn't cheap, but I think that you felt like that's what it was worth, and away you go. So, our gain, your loss, tough go at it. But yeah, it's you are very explosive on the outside, and you're very big on the outside. And I think that one plays off of the other because you're putting the secondary in a bind. Okay, who do I shade that safety over toward? Well, they can both run really fast and each burn me, and so you know what I mean. And so it's just it's a good spot to be in, and I think you'll be able to take advantage of it. And I think that you'll see plenty more of explosive plays because of it, and blocking because of how big they are.
All we need now is a little time up front, boys. All we need is a little time up front. Man, we should have went and added some incredible beast to the offensive line. Oh, hell, we did. I forgot. We did do that too. We'll talk about that on another episode. It's an exciting time to be talking Red Raider football, obviously. As we talked about leading into this time of the year, most exciting spring camp ever, most important or high urgency spring camp ever. You can describe it however you want it, but it's on and popping, to use an industry term, as we speak. Chris, appreciate speaking with you today once again. Thanks for the time and the insights. As always, enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one.
We love you all, man. Subscribe to that YouTube channel that we've got going, that little party that we have on a daily basis, man. We appreciate you out there. Guns remain up, and talk to everybody next time.
That's right. YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, get subscribed so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers who are hearing that every day. Appreciate you for always being out there, and shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. If you're interested, that's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.